Welcome to Sunrise Life, the podcast where we have deep conversations with fellow freelance models. And today I have Kat Ross on the line. Say hello.
Hi. How's everyone doing?
I am so excited to interview you. You've posted some stuff on your Instagram lately that really attracted me to have like a fuller conversation with you.
Thank you so much. I really thank you for having me. I've seen some of your stuff and it's good to see what you're doing.
Thanks. You know, I'm kind of sad that we haven't met in person yet because I know that we've both been modeling for a really long time.
Yes. I've been a fan of yours for a while. Yes, but no, you do amazing work.
Cool. Yeah. So you're based in New York, is that right?
I am, yes. I am currently based in New York, in Queens specifically, but larger New York area.
Sweet. I have so many questions that I want to ask you, but first, just for context for our listeners who, for whatever crazy reason, haven't already found out about you, can you explain how you first got into modeling and, in a nutshell, how your career has progressed to where you are now?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I started out, as a kid, I was performing arts all the way. It was theater, it was vocal lessons. And, with that came a little bit of modeling here and there, some commercial acting kind of work. And then when I got to college, it was like I wasn't ready to let go of that, but theater wasn't going to be my major and I didn't have the time for full-on production. So I kind of looked back and thought, what can I do creatively like that? And Model Mayhem was like a big thing at the time. And I signed up for that and it kind of naturally progressed. And then I was very lucky with my first nude shoot. The guy had shot for a few publications back in the day and he was very well-tempered. And, I think he even gave me some pointers with my posing and really, like, I had sat for painters and that kind of thing before. So that's part of how I started off with things. But this guy really gave me, fortunately, a very good first taste, art, figure posing with a little bit of a glamour element for the camera. So that's how it started. And I think through Model Mayhem and then as social media progressed, like Tumblr and then Instagram, I booked work that way. I've had a lot of back and forth, because there have been a lot of good times and there have been a lot of not so good times. And every time those not so good times roll around, I do need to kind of take a step back and ask myself what I'm doing. But I consider myself lucky to have found a lot of good people along the way that have kept me coming back to the heart of it, which for me is like the figure posing, the conceptual ideas, the artistic stuff where you're really working with someone in a studio on an idea. Or even if it's, if it's someone who has a professional candor, who's just rebuilding their own website or whatever. That kind of stuff is great too. So I've had a lot of back and forth. It has not been like a forward progression all the time for sure. And I'm still, I think I'm actually in a place where I am in that step back and building upon new rules for myself and new ideas and boundaries and goals that I have for the future working creatively.
I love that. I love that you incorporated your sense of like falling in and out of love with what you are doing just based on like your feelings about being a model in general. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
Yeah. I see on your profile that you mentioned you're also, in addition to being an actor and a model, a jewelry designer.
Yeah, that's something that I'm currently like working on quietly right now. I used to work for a jewelry design company in Connecticut. It's something that I picked up in bits and pieces and have always kept doing. Right now I'm living like I'm somehow living a dream and living kind of along the beach in Queens. And I have access to lots of interesting shells and stones. And I'm, working with a Dremel and working with all the materials and techniques I've learned along the way to create some really unique, beautiful mid-range pieces. So I'm excited about that. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so cool. I have like pipe dreams of making cool necklaces because I've been in the desert a lot and I find these really cool rocks and I got a rock tumbler and I'm like, I could do something with it.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds very cool.
Yeah. Also, for those people who live under a rock who haven't heard about you, I wanted to mention how fashionable you are. I just creeped on your Instagram and I was looking at the stuff that you had pinned to your highlights and everything that was like, clothed was like very fashionable. I can't describe myself. I'm personally not a fashionable person, but I really, really am inspired by people that can really pull it together,
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, fashion is one of those things that I've always more dabbled in, but I have worked way back. One of my friends had a one-woman show off Broadway and I was her wardrobe assistant, and it's something that I've always had fun with for shoots, definitely. I love styling. I love historical garb. I've worked in a lot of kind of historically adjacent settings, so that's been a factor. And yeah, I think fashion was kind of the first art, aside from like arts and crafts as a kid and theater, that I was like, oh, this is not just about like selling, junk at the store or like catalog fashion. It can be about communicating with the world and, feeling yourself out and getting to know your own style. And yeah, that's always something I valued.
Yeah, that's so cool. So how long have you lived in New York for?
I mean, I was born on Long Island and kind of always was in touch with Manhattan and the boroughs. I lived in Connecticut for about 5 years, but other than that, New York has kind of been my whole life. I've been living in the city since September. So it's a familiar territory for me.
That's rad. So with your modeling, have you also traveled outside of New York, or do people mostly come to you?
I've done a bit of traveling, not as much as I wanted to. There were certain circumstances in my life when I was younger, when I think things were a bit more active in that way. I might be wrong about that, but that prevented me from traveling like I wanted to then. I started traveling a bit more in the past 5 to 7 years. And then the past year, I've been kind of keeping it chill. So it's been a bit of, again, back and forth. I've traveled all over the place, but it hasn't been a constant.
Cool. I mean, traveling full time is also, it's cool, but I guess doing anything too much can burn you out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my thing, is like, I do get to a point where I'm like, okay, I got to push through this last thing. And sometimes that's work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that. So I had a question. I mean, like I said, I had a lot of questions, but one thing that I wanted to ask is I would like to know the story behind your Instagram handle, Cat Ross Eats You.
Oh, man. Oh, it's kind of complicated, and it is a bit of an inside joke with myself to make myself feel better about the platform and about the kind of interactions that happen there, and honestly, unfortunately, some people I have met and not had the best interactions with in the community. And, there was a point where I decided I needed to turn my back on an entire genre of modeling for my own sanity. That genre being boudoir, because I had just had, let's say, an awakening about people I was surrounded by, and it kind of put me in a headspace where I was like, whoa, okay, I need to step back and distance myself from this. And that was not well received on Instagram. Maybe part of the way I went about it, because I'm very direct with these things. I don't mince words a lot of the time. And I think a lot of the people, unfortunately, who follow our accounts are they're not always falling for the art, which is fine. There's always a time and place to have fun with our bodies and have levity and do the boudoir and enjoy our bodies and enjoy showing them off and And that is like nothing I would ever turn my back on ideologically, you know. But for me, it was like, I need to take that step back. And that got a bad response from a lot of followers who I think had followed me for, you know, the TNA, and were not happy to hear that I wasn't going to be doing that anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Gotcha.
that handle became a response to a lot of the, you know, the trolling and the hate and the, you know, once trolls get the sense that you are easily messed with, it becomes easier and easier for them to get a rise out of you. And I fall into that sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's what the handle is about.
Okay, I know exactly what you mean by that, because in the past, anytime that I was like freaking out about something like getting my account shut down, it seemed like my account would get shut down again because
Right.
or haters would report photos, and then next thing you know, they're getting what they want. They're getting the drama that they
Right.
put
It's
out
just,
to.
they love getting the entertainment and the drama out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you post about something because you're pissed about it, people like that. They like that.
I know.
I mean, maybe not everybody, but like some people definitely do.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely an energy pattern, but I resonated a lot with some of the stuff that you've posted. And I think I did see that post that you're talking about from, what was that, sometime last year, where you were mentioning like XYZ style of photo. This is not really art. Like, this is just like guys that are like trying to see your tits. And like,
Yeah.
I've definitely like done some of my own mental gymnastics, because I mean, I still do lots of like glamour nude modeling, and there's
like
definitely what's the word I'm looking for? There's definitely some like mental gymnastics that I have to do to trick myself into like just being fine with all of that, because I feel like I'm confident in my body, and I know I'm basically selling my dignity so I could pay my bill.
You know, and it's even, I feel like it's sad that we have to frame it that way, because I don't think, you know, I have had so many good interactions online on, you know, certain platforms that are really encouraging, and people are really sweet, and that is all they're there for, is the TNA. But they're respectful, and they do the transaction, and that's it. And that makes me feel like I'm not selling my dignity. When I feel like I'm selling my dignity is when, like, you know, I put my heart and soul into a photo that's not oriented that way, and then nobody cares, or like I even get negative responses because it's not the TNA, and it's like, oh my God, like this is, you know, it's I feel unfair, because it's like, yeah, I got people to my profile with the booty shots and stuff, and now maybe people feel like I'm turning my back on that or something, but it's like, that's not the audience, exclusively at least, that I wanted to cultivate for myself. And you know, I'm learning that the hard way, and I'm taking stock of that. And so now I am taking this time to realize, like, okay, this is how this beast works, and that's not what I want. So let's step back and regroup and see if there's another way to get like a balance, because again, I don't want to abandon nude work, and like there is fun boudoir. There is fun in all of this. It's when it starts getting ruined by like spectators and commentators and all of that I'm just kind of like, whoa, this is crazy. This is too much. I need to regain some control and maybe change some of what I'm posting so that I get different people responding to what I'm posting.
Yeah, I'm absorbing all of that. And what I'm getting is that it sounds like it's more about your impact on the world and the response that you're getting from your audience than it is about the photographers in particular that you're working with.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've worked with so many guys who are completely chill, and there's no issues regardless of what they're shooting. You know, there have been issues with photographers, but I think that's another thing that I kind of was picking up on, is like, okay, there are photographers that you work with, and other people look at that and are like driven to respond in certain ways and create certain kinds of work and talk to women in certain ways, you know?
Yeah.
And there's other kinds of people who are creating things in different ways that encourage not so great attitudes towards women and not so great people coming into the scene, picking up a camera, and, you know, like what reasons are they picking up a camera? And so it's really more about that. It's about what kind of machine I'm feeding, I guess, you know, that's how I'm kind of seeing it right now.
Yeah, I get that too. And I've gone through waves of like, you know, what kind of behavior I'll accept versus, you know, how many photo shoots and money I need to make. And it does kind of like ebb. Like sometimes I'm like, okay, I really need to pay off these loans. I'm going to shoot with this person that I probably don't really want to shoot with, but just because I'm trying to increase my income.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's always there. It's like you try to set these hard boundaries and the bills come, and absolutely there's always room for, like, you got to survive, and being human is tough and all of that. The thing I have tried to, and this is an option for everyone, and I know that, but like there are other areas of work I've done in the past, and this is one of those times that I've kind of like reached into my resume from the past and been like, I need to supplement this because the kind of work I'm getting offered, the kind of like, I don't necessarily feel comfortable in certain areas the way I used to. So I think there are times when and I think that's also something models should know, as like, it's okay. It's okay to have moments where it's not your full-time thing, if that's an option.
Yeah, because sometimes doing it full-time can, you know, take the joy out of it.
Yeah. It gets tough sometimes. Sometimes you're like going hard and it's all good. And then there are those times where, man, it's just like strikeout after strikeout.
You posted a video recently, like a reel, where I just rewatched it, where you were saying that there's a difference between a professional photo shoot and then most of the photo shoots that us traveling freelance full-time models are doing, and that you want to start making videos to educate newer models on what that is. And I want to tack on to that. With that in mind, what is your definition of a GWC, and what role does a GWC play in the freelance modeling world?
Yeah. So I think the best way I would define a GWC is someone who, through their own ideas or someone else's recommendation or seeing it online, they get this idea in their head that like they're going to buy a digital camera and they're going to seek out hot babes and it's all just going to come together for them. You know, they're going to be, I don't know. I don't know what exactly the idea is, but I know that the formula is like camera, babes, empire, something like that.
Yeah.
And that whole ethos where it's like, you could be at a strip club, which also, again, nothing wrong with that, nothing wrong with stripping. But instead, like, you have to tell your wife something, and it's like, does it sound better to tell your wife you're going to a strip club or that you're going to your photography club? That's kind of the way I always phrase it to people.
Oh my God, I've used the same exact.
Oh my God. And it's true. Like, I remember this one workshop I went to where one of the guys was clearly a newer photographer, and he literally, before going into a one-on-one with me, I saw him take off his wedding ring, and I'm just like, what is the implication of that?
Wow, that's awkward.
Yeah, what? I don't know what to make of that, but I think your ideas about this are like a little misconstrued. So yeah, that's how I would characterize a GWC, as someone who is, you know, in no way there for the photo, really. Like, no way there for the art, isn't planning on developing their work, learning about lighting, learning about how to talk to, you know, not just a model, but any subject. Yeah, I mean, you can just tell that the plan usually goes as far as the camera and the models and posting the pictures maybe, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess the way that plays into the freelance modeling community is, I mean, if I were to be honest, I don't know that it would exist anymore without them, which is part of the problem I've always had with things is like there are, I almost want to make a distinction between GWCs and harmless, quote unquote, GWCs, because they are also out there, you know, these guys who are never gonna get better at photography, never gonna, you know, look for a gallery to put their work in, but they're nice enough guys and nothing bad's gonna happen just because they're taking photos of you naked or whatever. But I do think that part of the problem with it, and this is kind of going back a lot of the way it used to be, especially if I was traveling a bit, is like you supplement the trip with like the people who don't really know that much about photography and who maybe are just kind of shooting because you're a hot girl in their place. And because of that, you then get to go and do like a lower rate or a trade with someone whose work is just incredible. Over the years, and maybe it's just me, maybe I'm not looking in the right places, I don't know, but I feel like that dynamic has kind of gotten worse and worse. I hate to put it that way, but as cameras have become more and more affordable and available and, you know, such good quality, I think there are just a lot of people who are shooting models right now who don't really have that background of like finding the camera first and then getting into model photography.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, like a lot of these guys are nice enough and I don't want to, you know, come down on their person or anything just because they have an interest in hot women. Like who's going to begrudge that? But I do think it serves to feed this dynamic where it's like, am I modeling or am I doing something that's like, you know, I don't know who this will offend or not. I am very sex positive. I feel sometimes when I'm going into the situations with GWCs, it's honestly something that's more sex work adjacent than it is modeling adjacent, which I don't in my heart have a problem with, but I don't know if you've like seen this term, like the enshittening of the internet or like Instagram, where it's like you keep having to pay ad revenue and there's more commercials and there's more ads and it just gets worse and worse. I feel like it's kind of like that. Things have just become saturated with people who are interested in one thing and you don't really know, like, am I modeling? Am I kind of having a parasocial, relationship, but like, you know what I mean? It's a weird kind of relationship where, you know, it's not about the photography. So what's exactly going on there? And yeah, I'm interested, but I'm also like, let's pump the brakes on that because that can go south kind of quickly, is my opinion.
Yeah. Where I kind of, you know, draw the line on that these days, and this didn't used to always be my boundary, because for the first 8 or so years of my traveling modeling, my criteria for if I'm going to work with somebody or not was based on whether or not I thought they might be a serial killer.
Yeah,
but lately I've tightened up because, you know, I've had feelings of burnout over the course of the pandemic, and now my criteria is, okay, if you're a GWC, and I should probably define this for our listeners because I forget that not everybody knows what GWC means.
Yes.
If they're out there and you're curious, it stands for guy with camera. And it's usually used in a derogatory way. But what Kat and I are saying is that not all GWCs are nefarious. Some of them are nice.
Yeah.
They're not as motivated to, you know, reinvent the wheel with like groundbreaking conceptual photography. You know, a lot of it is sitting on a hotel bed and doing 5,000 poses over the course of 2 hours, which is fine. Where was I going with this? So where I draw the line, if like when I'm going to say no to the shoot, for me, beyond if they don't want to pay my rate or they want to push my limits, because that's obvious. Like I don't want to work with somebody that's not going to respect my rates or my erotic limits. Yeah. But if I look at their photos and their lighting and the way they compose images. And I feel like they're going to make me look bad, or if I cringe at all, or if I see micro expressions in the models' faces that kind of are telling me that they don't want to. That's when I'm just like, sorry, I'm busy. Like I can't do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, the micro expressions. That's that's a huge tell. And yeah, I feel like that's like a whole other topic, but so important.
Yeah. With all this being said about crazy photo shoots and crazy photographers and different personalities, I would like to introduce the photo shoot fail of the week. An opportunity to tell a crazy story about a photo shoot that you had. It could be crazy good. It could be crazy bad. It could be like, what the fuck was all that about? But what's one of your crazy stories?
Okay, I'm gonna volunteer one that is, it's kind of an ongoing story, and it's a story about my naivete, and it's really cliche. So here it is. When I was younger, I worked with someone more than once because I was naive, and in my dear sweet baby heart, I thought that people, like, why would they be lying? I was the moron who at legal but young, the photographer was like, I'm a nudist. Do you mind?
Oh, I see.
And I was like, I can't impose upon your way of life. And it took me until I was speaking into another model to be like, holy shit, I'm stupid. And be like, okay, I have to not work with this guy again, because obviously he's like recruiting the naive and the people who don't like to step on toes. And that was like a big formative experience for me. Just learning that, like, he was super nice to me, he never did anything wrong, but like, oh my God, it's never okay for the photographer to be naked. It's a meme at this point, but it's never okay for a photographer to suggest that something about his personal life need to be a part of a professional photo shoot. So there you go. My soul is bared.
Yeah. I've had the request as well, but fortunately I had already been invited to like online secret communities of other models that would talk with each other. And I think the fact that other people like yourself already had to go through that and you could share your experience or your thoughts and feelings about it helps future models go, oh, this is weird behavior, instead of having to wonder, is this weird? Is this cool? Should I allow it?
I mean, as background, my parents were like kind of hippies. And even though they were by no means nudist, it was that kind of upbringing of like, certain people are going to live different ways and you're going to encounter all kinds of different people. And like, the arts are about nudity. And like, through the filter of my youth and my naivete, I think I excused a lot of things that were very obviously not okay. So,
yeah. Even if you're not like, physically being assaulted or like verbally being degraded in that moment, the fact that for a fact after the fact that they're probably getting their rocks off to that moment, and somehow
right.
that is in itself kind of a boundary violation.
Yeah, definitely. It's you were there to provide them for something that you were not consenting towards.
Yes.
And that's never okay.
Yeah, it can be weird. I've definitely, I've had similar situations, not with a nudist photographer, but where you can tell like halfway through the shoot where they're asking you to maybe repetitively brush your hair over and over again. And you're like, wait, do you have a head fetish? Because you told me this in advance. I want to know.
Yes, that actually brings up like another great parallel, which is I shot with someone early on again before I knew about the fetish scene, and they kept asking to take pictures of my feet. And I was like, at a certain point, I kind of was like, you know what? This is weird because you're not telling me, and it's very obvious. And it's, like there are fetish models. There is some professional for every professional request. And I think that's an important thing to highlight. It's like, because there are plenty of models. And at the time, even I was open to fetish more. I would have said, yes, absolutely, let's do a foot fetish shoot. Because it was like this weird thing that was being skirted around, it got weirder. And it became a relationship that I didn't want to maintain professionally.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, it's not that like, you know, you're not comfortable with foot fetish. It's just that if they're being sneaky, that just makes it weird automatically.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I want to take a short little break to tell you about Model Society. ModelSociety.com is a website dedicated to featuring figurative fine art photography for models and photographers. What makes them different than other portfolio hosting websites is that some of those other websites will still host kind of tacky photography or exploitative photos. Model Society screens all of their contributors for quality and authenticity. So you only get the best of the best on there. If you're not a photographer or model, you can still enjoy and appreciate Model Society because they also have newsletters and magazines featuring their best work and new articles each week. Check it out, modelsociety.com. I will also include a link to Model Society in the show notes. All right, now back to our show.
I have another question that I'd like to ask that I also ask everybody on the show. Sure. Sometimes by the time we get to this part, like you've already sort of touched on the topic, but what is I call it the rising phoenix era of your life? What is something in your life that could be related to your modeling or not, where you were faced with some kind of a challenge that you had to overcome? It could be an insecurity challenge, a career shift, or anything.
Oh man, I mean, there's a lot of moments like that in life, I think, for all of us. But the most recent and obvious one is I was engaged a couple of years back, and that didn't work out for a lot of reasons, but some that I felt were very much to do with kind of the unfairness of sometimes being a woman. You know, it was an issue of having children, which for some women is dangerous, and that includes myself. And it was kind of coming to terms with the fact that if your life doesn't end up how you want to, or things don't go as you imagined, you know, it doesn't even have to be this big thing of like, oh, I faced adversity and my life went up in flames and now I'm rebuilding. It's more of a thing of just kind of going like, you know, what do I need my life to be for myself and you know, maybe the few really immediate people around me who need me and I need them. But aside from those people, what do I need to make my life something that if it doesn't go as predicted, it's not a catastrophe? And that's kind of what I've been doing the past year and a half. And it is challenging to slow down for a second and, you know, not have amazing announcements and not have huge modeling trips and kind of decide to not make big decisions for a while. But it also kind of made me realize, I think, how much, not just in, you know, the modeling and social media sense, but how much I was living and how much I think a lot of people live for how the people in their lives perceive them or how their community perceives them. And, you know, while you need people in your life and your community, I think sometimes we kind of cut off parts of ourselves to fit more cohesively with the people around us. And I think I was kind of doing that. And I think without this kind of life upsetting event, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to step back and being like, oh, you know, I think I'm trying to uphold the idea that I am ecstatic with my life instead of figuring out how to quietly be ecstatic with my life. So yeah, that's my big thing.
I resonate with that a bit too. It might be because like the length of our career might be similar in length, and perhaps there's like somewhat of a timeline that has a lot of similarities to it. But I feel like my most impressive era was between 2017 to 2019 as far as my accomplishments or whatever, or just what I was doing in my modeling being exciting to the people that were following me on social media. Today, I'm not trying hard to like crank out publications or crank out like new inventions or whatever. Like I didn't even make a calendar last year, you know?
Oh, yeah. I know. It changes. Yeah, your priorities change, and I think just the ability to crank stuff out it's tough. It's time consuming, it's energy consuming, and if you're not feeling it, sometimes it's really hard to do that.
Yeah. And I have been feeling like that also lately. It's just that you have to get back to like when you first started doing this, you're really passionate about it. And
yes,
when I first started, I did mostly TFP for like 6 years.
Right. There was so much TFP in the beginning. Yeah.
But then you get good at it and you're like, all right, I should be getting paid because I'm good at this.
All right.
And then you're only getting paid. And then all the paid gigs that you're getting are like, you know, kind of fading into each other and like sort of dragging you down. And you're like, oh, I only do this type of shoot because this is the type of shoot that pays me. And then you reinvent yourself again. Like, you know, you have a dip down, a dip back up, and then you build your following and then everybody thinks you're amazing because you've proven yourself to be this like amazing artist. And then I just feel like being a lifetime creative person or just like a long-term freelance model who models like for more than a decade or longer, like I feel like you have to have those like roller coasters because it wouldn't make sense if it was always great, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think honestly, just having people like yourself and a bunch of other models, thankfully, that I think, you know, a lot of people have been doing this a while and have seen a lot and have shared a lot. And that has enabled more people to talk more about it. And I think that's a great thing because that means that maybe, I mean, it's so hard to avoid, quote unquote, like unpleasant moments in life. But there are things that I think, you know, younger models maybe can know and avoid going into it instead of having to make all those, you know, sometimes scary mistakes.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also have a strong urge to, you know, want to put information out that helps younger models. But at the same time, I think about myself when I was, you know, getting into it. And there were amount of times that, fortunately for me, like Facebook wasn't as popular back then, but there's a lot of cringe stuff that I did in my earlier days of my career that I look back on and I'm like, damn, like people would give me advice on, you know, who to not shoot with. And at the time, because I was broke and I needed the money, I would still work with XYZ person. And now I look back and I'm like, damn, I knew so-and-so did this horrible thing. And I still worked with them because I was just, you know, trying to get by.
Yeah.
And so there's so much that like I have this desire to want to help younger models, but at the same time, it sucks, but people are always going to be working with predators and stuff, sadly.
They are. And I mean, there is part of me gets super self-righteous sometimes and gets angry at that. Part of me steps back and thinks about when I was younger. And, you know, I mean, even now, just making ends meet is so hard sometimes in a freelance career. And I get that. And I know that, like, you know, a lot of these girls are not just like sitting over their warning messages from models cackling, being like, I'm going to do it anyway. You know, they're trying to make their careers. I get that. I do hope though that, like, I don't know, I just wish there was some kind of communal security net so that when stuff gets bad, you know, there was a way we could help each other out. But it's just tough. Everything's tough.
Yeah. And because of what we do being closely associated with sex work, right? Because a lot of it is going to somebody's hotel room and getting naked so they can take pictures of us. Like things like, you know, actors guilds, like it would be harder to enforce a freelance modeling guild where we're protected and we have insurance and stuff.
Right.
But I have heard people talking about how it would be great to have something like that, like a protective entity.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be amazing if there were ever a way we could figure out something like that. But I mean, for the time being, it is just so awesome to hear people talking at all. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for facilitating that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the more I think of it, it's just like if there's like a protective entity that makes it like an agency, and when it's an agency, there are standards, and freelance models don't like being standards because we're doing it because we want to be freelance.
Mm-hmm.
So is it counterintuitive?
I know.
You know?
I know. There's always a hang up somewhere. Nothing is perfect, especially for something like this. You know, the free and freelancers makes it very hard to like regiment in any way. So
yeah. But also though, like freelancing in itself is more and more prevalent. Like there's even like, especially in New York, because this is where, when I was traveling through New York, this is where I learned about this, where professional photographers that are looking for models through their like agency platforms, oftentimes now these agency platforms have like a section for like, you know, social media influencers that they could hire that person instead, even if they're not represented by an agency.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely, there have been interesting new branches that have opened up in the agency world that are a little less crazy than they used to be, which gives me a little hope because, you know, and I think especially for models who also do performance kind of stuff, you know, I think there are commercial agencies where you can just kind of get into the pool as an actor or an entertainer, and it doesn't have to be this thing of like, you must be 5'10" and 115 and not over 25. And, you know, so there has been a little bit more opening up that way, which has been pleasantly surprising. But yeah, it still does not nearly cover the inclusion you need when you're talking about freelance kind of people.
Yeah, it's almost that the nature of the beast is counterintuitive to having a protective entity.
Yep. Yeah.
So for currently where you're at, as you've mentioned throughout the podcast, you're kind of like on a little bit of a downswing with your desire to like, you know, fully be a full-time freelance model. Did I word that right? I don't want to be misrepresenting your intentions.
I mean, I would say that like this is still a full-time, but there's like, I kind of consider myself like just a professional freelancer across the board. Like everything is kind of always all the time. It's when you can kind of stack things and fit them in.
Yeah.
But yeah, there has definitely been a lull in a strategic way. And it's not, you know, it is kind of like, it's a lack of passion for dealing with the stuff that comes with all of this and kind of trying to weed through the good players and the bad players. And, you know, I think the most exhausting part of setting up a photo shoot is just like, okay, who is it that I am actually dealing with?
Yeah. Do they have a reputation?
Right. So I am in a lull, but I think weirdly, and it's not like preachy advice. It's just an observation that I've noticed as a benefit for myself. There is something to be said for pulling away from constantly being so active and constantly looking at other people's images. It just kind of allows your mind more time to do its own thing. And I think that's a really important part of the creative process that we're all forgetting, because you have to post like every day in order for the algorithm to even take notice. And that's something that I'm finding really enjoyable, and I am having more inspiration like on the other side of the camera, and it just gives me more idea time. And that I feel like has put me in the headspace of getting excited to reach out to people that I want to work with, whose work I'm inspired by, and trying to rebuild that way. You know, I think, you know, we all try and like, and I've totally done it. There was a phase where I was just like, I absolutely will not shoot for free. No way. But there is a time and a place, personally speaking. I can only speak for myself, for TFP, where it's like, no, the value of the image and the time and the thought that went in, like the photographer's effort and my effort, and like that combined work and such a beautiful visual product in the end.
Yeah.
That is worth every penny that I'm not making, you know?
I totally get that. There has been a handful of times over the course of my career where like an image that I, participated in creating on either side of the camera, I suppose, just for whatever reason made an impact on me. And I was like, yes, I don't know what it is, but there's something about this photo that I'm really happy about.
Yeah.
And it's not possible to like make that happen. It just happens sometimes. And I think that's what keeps me going.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like those sparks when you're flipping back through the photos with the photographer or whoever else is working with you, and you're just like, oh, God, this is it. This is amazing. And
yeah,
it's just such a great feeling to be truly part of a team in that way. I do like independent work, but I love being part of a team in a studio that is just there to make something, part very well planned and part very organic come together.
Love that. I'm feeling exactly it as you're describing it, because there has to be an intention set forth in order to like make it happen. I mean, you can get like images that are great haphazardly, but you at least have the talent to like, get the focus or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. So with all of this being said, like moving forward, and I hate this question too, so you don't have to answer it if you don't want to.
Okay.
But as we are models and we have been doing this for a long time, other people ask this also, and they ask it because they're curious and maybe they're like, lying about being concerned about our well-being, but like for our futures, like do you have like a soft hold on like future skills that you want to get more into in addition to your modeling?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the thing is I have so many interests, and I think there are so many that could be worked into modeling, and they can also operate independent of modeling. Photography is something that in the past year I've gotten really passionate and serious about, and not even interestingly, and maybe it's because of the modeling, but not really model photography, a lot of like nature and macro leaning kinds of stuff, landscapes. I just love it. And then, I mean, I've always been a writer and kind of a reader, thinkery kind of person. So I would love to, Patreon is one of these things I keep saying I'm going to do, but I'm so invested in the idea of really creating nice written pieces along with the photography that I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But yeah, there's all kinds of different aspirations I have. It's about finding the balance, I guess.
Yeah. Finding the balance, getting the inspiration, and then creating the marketing.
Yes, that's really the key, is the marketing. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it. I always feel like moving into those sorts of things, I know everything. I'm great at marketing. I'm good at social media. But then when it comes to do the marketing actions, I just need to hire somebody, I think.
I know. It's exhausting. And yeah, like some people do it and they're thrilled with it and that's their job. And yeah, would be better handled by someone who's good with PR.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's hard to stand out as an artist, but I guess getting there is the journey of trying it is valiant.
Yep. It's all about just trying things, getting out there.
That's awesome. Are there any things that you have like that you're working on right now, or perhaps things that you've got out already that you would like to let the audience know about, if you have anything possibly to promote?
You know what? I am going to actually do something a little bit different. I'm going to promote the Fine Art Academy that I've been posing for recently because, man, rent just keeps going up for art studios. I've been working with the Long Island Academy of Fine Art recently, and they have some just incredible top tier professors, and they serve all skill levels. And that's an organization that I'm really invested in right now. I am doing a Patreon, so stay tuned for that. That's going to come sooner rather than later. And yeah, there will be jewelry by summer. So stay tuned for that.
Awesome. I can't wait to see the jewelry. Like I mentioned earlier, I've gotten excited about, polishing rocks and then figuring out how to jewelry them together somehow.
So.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, it's been really great chatting with you. Are there any other topics that you wanted to get into before we go?
I can't really think of anything off the top of my head. Just thank you so much for having me. And really, thank you for just talking about your experiences and I just have to say that your brand, I guess, is really great. You present very professional, but also very personable. And I do think it's important that we have people like that just opening up conversation spaces for models because, it's mostly face value with us.
Yeah, and absolutely. You're welcome. I'm so glad that you were able to take the time to do this. And I have really felt like I have gotten to know you more. And thank you for answering all my questions, even though sometimes I felt like I was kind of prying a little bit. You were very open with everything.
Yeah, not at all. You're awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and sometimes I feel like, gosh, when it comes to posting stuff online, a long time ago, I followed this model named Wonder Hussy.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And her thing was she would post blogs about her crazy experiences, and she would make YouTube videos about things that were just, getting into her world. And she made a post on Facebook saying that she believed in a radical transparency, where she just thought that posting her thoughts, posting her beliefs, posting her experiences, just brought in energy from, the universe to keep her going somehow. And I was like,
yeah,
I like that. I know that it's not everybody's thing, and perhaps something will bite me in the ass one day because I've said too much about something on the internet.
Oh, no, I am actually with you. I mean, I have probably spoken too much myself, and that is actually something I've been working on in my own life is I just, I want to be, radically transparent. That doesn't mean everything I think I need to say needs to be said. But I think that the important things being said is, it's crucial that there's space for that.
Even if you're pushing people away with what you say, though, because we were talking about this earlier in the podcast where you said that you some people felt offended by things that you were saying. I feel like those people, they can, don't let the door hit them on the way out, right? Because that brings room for people that are on the same page to come into your life, right?
This is true. That is true. Yeah, absolutely.
Hell yeah. Well, I think that's a really good note to end on.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for participating. And I will get in touch with you over social media for getting an image to share.
Awesome.
Hell yeah. All right. Cool. Well, I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. Talk to you soon. Bye.